Okay, so the NRL player media boycott. Let's discuss it. Now, Clint Newton is the head of the RLPA. He does not have a great relationship with members of the media, and I don't think he has a great relationship with the league either. The CBA currently in place expires at the end of this season. This has been a long process, 20 months of negotiation to renew the CBA. Obviously, some high-profile players would have also been present in those negotiations as well. We're talking like your Cam Munsters, your Christian Welshes, your Wade Grahams, those kind of senior players within playing groups who've played Origin, that kind of thing. They would have also been present during meetings. They're not happy. Basically, with the deal that has been tabled. There's a few sticking points. In principle, they've agreed to a lot of them. For this season, for example, the average salary is up. It currently sits at 401,000 Australian dollars. The minimum salary is currently sitting at 130. That's the league minimum salary, 130,000 Australian dollars. The salary cap's gone up anywhere, depending on source, between 20 and 25%, somewhere in between there, around 22, 23%. That's the current raise in salary cap from last year, so the players are getting paid more, but that's the end of this current CBA negotiation with the increase in salary cap. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about. Will the NRL fine players and clubs for media no-shows? The NRL deal itself, the minimum salaries under the deal being tabled will go up to 150,000 Australian dollars by 2027 when the deal they put on the table will expire. That's the next CBA. An expanded injury hardship fund, that was a big sticking point. An expanded player medical support package as well, and a wellbeing and education program. The NRL is willing to throw a lot of money, a combined total of around 40 million Australian dollars into these funds. So player welfare has been an ongoing concern. This was highlighted in 2020 when money was missing from the players hardship fund and retirement fund. The NRL and media partners, state and the RLPA were meant to be paying into this fund. The NRL hadn't been keeping up with their obligations. They had transferred money out of that fund to other areas of the NRL, and there was a $10 million shortfall. That obviously caused a lot of problems back in 2020. There was a renegotiation of the CBA and TV deal to resume play in 2020, and of course the referees almost went on strike in 2020. So things have happened. Now the main media partners are Channel 9 and Fox and KO Sports. KO Sports work in partnership with Fox for a streaming service, of which the NRL website, which I consume the content, is run by KO Sports on behalf of Fox. And of course, you've got the mainstream newspapers and also the local newspapers and radio stations such as Triple M and 2GB, who will be, and Send Sports, for example, who will be sending journos in to press conferences. A lot of the journos on the radio are ex-players, ironically, so they have a better relationship, I would suppose, over the mainstream TV and newspapers. Obviously, there's contractual arrangements with the NRL and their media partners. The players, obviously, as part of that contractual arrangement, the NRL says players and coaches will be made available for media commitments at media days and pre- and post-match press conferences. So that's another thing, and they have to be available. So the players boycotting is technically a breach of that contractual arrangement. So what will happen? Will the NRL fine clubs and players for media no-shows? They do it with coaches when they storm out or say something or refuse to host a media conference. Ricky Stewart and Trent Robinson, for example, have been regularly fined for some of their comments in the press. I think even Wayne Bennett's copped a few fines as well. When they say contrary things or are in breach of their media obligations, will the NRL fine the players? Now, beginning of the season, in the pre-season, we were in the same situation. Clint Newton stated that the players would be boycotting their media commitments in the pre-season this year. This has been a rumbling issue. Now, I'm going to go to a point that the RLPA wants to say on. I think this is the main sticking point. I think a lot of the numbers with the deal, I think the NRL and Rugby League Players Association are pretty much going to negotiate a little bit. But the main sticking point, ironically, is not really to do with money. It's to do with taking matches overseas and future rule changes. This seems to really got under the grill of the RLPA's CEO, Clint Newton. Now, there's clearly also a lack of trust, and I think that predates Andrew Abdo. This goes back to the Todd Greenberg era. But the RLPA wants to say on matches taken to the US. Now, the NRL wants to take games to Vegas. They wanted to take games this year to the US. They've still haven't, but they want to take regular season games, or maybe the All-Star game, maybe an Origin game, to the US. And they want to do this on a long-term thing, not as a one-off. They want to grow the game in the North American market. The RLPA, this is their sticking point. They can say we refuse to agree to this, because in order for the NRL to get games overseas, the players have to be on board. The RLPA wants to say on what time of the season or location. They're saying Vegas, but it could be Los Angeles, it could be San Diego, it could be San Francisco, it could be Portland, it could be Seattle, it could be anywhere in the US. I'm just using cities on the west coast there. The RLPA wants to say, and that they also want to say on future rule changes. And what we've seen since 2020 is a lot of rule changes, such as the 6 again, at the single ref, and a few other rule changes as well, and a clampdown on head contact. Now, the RLPA weren't consulted on a lot of these rule changes that were brought in following the resumption of play in 2020. They want to be consulted on any future rule changes or rule amendments. They say they haven't been. That is their main sticking point. Now, the money side of things, yeah, okay, you could argue there's a few little areas of negotiation, but I do think the root cause of this player media boycott, firstly, I think it is a trust issue. We did see in 2020, when Todd Greenberg was still in charge, that there was clearly a breakdown in trust between the clubs, the players and the NRL over a whole variety of issues, and that also includes the shortfalls in the player welfare fund. Well, one of the player welfare funds, there was maybe a 30 million Australian dollar pot of cash. When they went to access that pot of cash, they were $10 million short, and that obviously, ultimately, I think was one of the reasons why Todd Greenberg was out as NRL CEO, and Andrew Abdo initially was brought in as interim and now is the permanent replacement. So there's clearly still a lack of trust between the RLPA and the NRL around a lot of issues, and I think a lot of that stems from the Todd Greenberg era. Now, what do the NRL do? Will they fine the players for no-shows? When it comes to the next media rights negotiation, will this impact the value of the next media package that the NRL will negotiate with Fox, Channel 9 and potentially other broadcasters as well, should either of them not feel happy with the deal on the table? Will that impact media rights deals both domestically and overseas going forward? Obviously you've got Sky in New Zealand, you've got Sky Sports here in the UK who have the overseas rights. I think they're shown on ESPN in the US. Will this ongoing player media boycott harm any future media deal that the NRL will want to strike with its current and potential new media partners? Because this is a media deal-driven league financially. Gate receipts alone cannot sustain the salaries, the running costs, and the other overheads that clubs and the league has. It is heavily, a lot of the income, about 80-85% of the income comes from the media and the media deal, and with the players boycotting that, that could harm any future negotiations between the league and its media partners and potential new media partners to expand the growth of the game. So we shall see what happens. We'll see what happens with the NRLW, because obviously expanding competition this year to 10 teams from 6, so you would expect there to be a lot of media interest in that domestically in Australia. Players being interviewed, a lot of players who are moving clubs. Those players who will be debuting in the NRLW from the state competitions for the first time, of course, they're part of the RLPA, so they're also going to follow this boycott. Are all the players aligned? I'm not so sure there's a full agreement within the playing base. There's got to be divisions at some point. Not all the players are going to agree with the stance that Clint Newton as the head has taken and the RLPA as a whole has taken. But we were here at the beginning of the season with a short media boycott. They stopped short of a strike. The NRL said it had contingency plans for that. So this has been rumbling on. They've got until October to figure out a new CBA. I can see heads rolling. I can see either Clint Newton or Andrew Abdo being out of a job. And I think Clint Newton will be the one out of a job. I think Andrew Abdo is pretty safe in his position. The NRL has obviously made a lot of money. It's survived COVID. And I think what is interesting is other leagues, I'm going to use the NHL as an example, have still got massive escrow payments. Their salary cap hasn't gone up. And when you've got trying to grow the sport in North America and the league in North America, like the AFL is also doing, with much interest from North American sports fans, partly because these were the first two major leagues in the English-speaking world, at least, to resume back in 2020 in the early summer for the Northern Hemisphere. You talk to fans of the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL. When you mention CBA negotiations, you'll be you'll have North American fans going, "Oh God, lockout, strike. We've been here before. It's frustrating." The way the media, from the articles I've read, is very anti-RLPA, very pro-league. So there's clearly a media bias, and that could be feeding into this. So we'll see what happens, but there's clearly a breakdown in trust, and there has been trust issues between the league and the Players Association for some time, predating Andrew Abdo's time as NRL CEO. But this is a headache the NRL doesn't want. I think ultimately it could actually harm the players going forward, and it could harm contractual negotiations with sponsors, investors, and media partners going forward when the TV deal and any potential sponsorships and taking games over to the US come into play. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how long it lasts. But at the moment, there's an NRL player media boycott. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. Are the RLPA right to institute this boycott? Are the NRL being unfair in some of the deal they put on the table? Can there be some common ground, or will we see next season start with a player strike? Because it's going to be interesting. We should be talking about Origin 3. We should be talking about the NRLW expanded 10-team league from this season. But at the moment, this is dominating the headlines in surrounding rugby league in Australia and New Zealand. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. I will have some more content for you very, very soon.